Today we're going to work on lesson 512, fraction multiplication number story. So our objectives for today are we want to be able to create story context for fraction multiplication problems. Also, we want to be able to apply and extend previous understandings of multiplication division to multiply and divide fractions. So those are our goals for today. So to start off, let's get warmed up here. It says determine if each number sentence is less than, greater than, or equal to. Okay, so when I look at this one here, I can see 3/4, but I'm multiplying it by a fraction greater or a number greater than 1, so I know that 3/4 times 3 would be greater than 3/4 because I'm multiplying it by a number greater than 1. Okay, when I look at this one, here I can see I'm multiplying 3/4 by 1, and you remember the multiplicative identity property. Any number multiplied by 1 is simply going to be itself, so these two would be equal. When I look here, I can see that I'm multiplying 3/4 by a fraction less than 1, so I know that that's going to end up being less than 3/4. So remember, when you multiply a fraction by a number greater than 1, or on evaluate they say integer, if it's a number or a fraction greater than 1, or again they might say integer, then it's going to be greater than the fraction you started with. If you multiply a fraction by 1, it's going to be equal to itself. And if you multiply a fraction by a fraction less than 1, it's going to be less than what you started with. So let's look at a couple of these. So I can see here again 7/8 looks pretty big, but I don't even have to multiply this out because I can see that 7/8 is less than 1. So 3/4 multiplied by 7/8 is going to be less than. The next one here, I have a fraction of 1.5. It's greater than 1, so I know 3/4 multiplied by 1.5 will be greater than 3/4. And then our last one on here, 3/3 I know is equal to 1, so 3/4 times 3/3, same thing as 3/4 times 1, so those two would be equivalent or equal. Okay, so then you can pause the video, try those using the same method. Remember, if you're multiplying by a fraction greater than 1, it will be greater than your original fraction. If you multiply by a fraction less than 1, it'll be less than. Okay, now we want to think about real-world situations where you use multiplication, discuss with a partner. So some things that I could think of multiplying would be if you are trying to find out how many drinks you need for a class. For example, if I buy some Kool-Aid boxes or something like that, and there's 6 in a pack, and I have 24 students, I know that 6 times 4 would get me to 24. You could also think about if you buy like a case of Coke or something like that at the store, a 12-pack. If I was to buy 3 of those because I was having 36 people over for a party, I could say 3 times 12. So a lot of times could be drinks is a good example of how you could use multiplication. There's many different things there. Now, here are some units that may be used when doing a multiplication story problem. Determining the total number of items in equal groups. Items such as finding out how many pencils are in 3 packs of 12. So I would say 3 times 12. Conversions, converting larger units to smaller units, such as finding the number of inches and feet. Area, calculating the area of a rectangle, such as finding the number of square foot tiles that would cover the floor of a 5x9 room. Volume, calculating the volume of an object, such as the number of centimeter cubes needed to fill a 6x8 by 4 centimeter box. Comparisons, comparing amounts or measurements. For example, if a child is 3 feet and her father is 2 times as tall, her father is 2 times 3, which equals 6 feet tall. So these are all examples of where you might see multiplication in a story problem or scenario. So using these numbers, create a multiplication number story from some of the situations we've discussed. Okay, so you can kind of see it set up here. You might want to just say 7 times 8 equals 56. So think of 7 as something. So take a minute, pause the video. I want you to go ahead and write a multiplication number story. Okay, hopefully you've written down your multiplication number story. Let's look at some examples. Kina has a container that holds 7 cups of water. She wants to know how many ounces it holds. There are 8 ounces in 1 cup. How many ounces of water does Kina's water hold? Okay, and so we know that she has 7 cups, and each one is worth one cup is worth 8 ounces. So I really don't need this, but we're doing some converting here, right? So I know I would take my 8 ounces, multiply by the 7 cups to find out that she has 56 ounces. So that's an example of a conversion type of problem. Marty's room is 7 feet wide and 8 feet long. And I see width, wide, and I see long, which tells me that I'm going to be doing area, right? And it also says how many square feet, and if you remember, square feet or square anything means area. So I can see there that I'd be doing 7 multiplied by 8 to get to my 56. Next one here, Angus read 8 books over the summer. His cousin read 7 times as many, so 7 times or times as many means we're going to multiply. So that's another example there when you're doing a comparison. So Angus read 8 books, his cousin read 7 times that. Now, recognizing creating number stories involving multiplication requires you to draw on your understanding of what it means to multiply. So you're thinking about your prior knowledge there. So today, you will extend your understanding of multiplication to real-life situations involving fraction multiplication. So we see 2/3 and 9 here, the numbers provided. So let's look at the example. Danny earned $9 in allowance last week. He spent 2/3 of, and remember we talked about a fraction of a whole number or a fraction of a fraction, we're multiplying. So we know he had $9 and he spent 2/3 of, and I'm going to box of because that reminds me to multiply, his allowance of comic books. How much did he spend on comic books? So we know we need to find 2/3 of 9 is the way that they wrote that problem. So what operation would you use to solve the number story? How do we know? I just kind of explained there that we know it's 2/3 of 9. So to find 2/3 of 9, we would multiply 2/3 by 9 because we've done that in previous lessons. Now, looking here, you want to pick a number pair from above, create a multiplication number story ending in a question. Before you solve, you need to predict how the product will compare to each of the factors. Okay, so as we look at these, if I'm saying 1/2 multiplied by 6, the prediction I want to make, and even if it's just in your head, is it going to be less than 6 or is it going to be greater than? Same thing here, 1/6 multiplied by 3/4, 8 multiplied by 2/3, and 1/4 multiplied by 4/5. If you remember in the warm-up, we said if you multiply a fraction by a number or integer greater than 1, it will be greater than what you started with. If you multiply a fraction by a fraction or a number equal to 1, then your product's going to be the same as the fraction you started with. And then again, if you multiply by a fraction less than 1, your product will be less than the fraction you started with. So think about those as you go through there as you pick one. Okay. So hopefully you've done your example. So let's look at a couple they've done here. Yours again could be different type of multiplication story problem, also different subjects. So let's see. For 1/2 and 6, a pudding recipe called for 6 cups of milk. If Marissa made half a batch, how much milk could she use? And look, if you look there, they said half a batch, so we have to know that that represents the fraction 1/2 or half, right? So the prediction they gave was the product will be greater than half, but less than 6 because 1/2 is less than 1 and 6 is greater than 1. Now for 1/6 and 3/4, they said Andy's mom left 3/4 of a pan of lasagna in the refrigerator. Andy ate 1/6 of it. What fraction of the whole pan of lasagna did Andy eat? So the prediction they've made is the product will be less than 1/6 and less than 3/4 because both factors are less than 1. Some more examples here for 8 and 2/3. Miss Barrett sent out 8 glasses for an after-school snack. She poured 2/3 of the juice in each glass. How much juice did she pour in all? The product will be less than 8 because 2/3 is less than 1, but greater than 2/3 because 8 is greater than 1. And for 1/5 and 4/5, Rachel ran 4/5 of a mile on Monday. On Tuesday, she only ran 1/4 as far. How far did she run on Tuesday? So their prediction is the product will be less than 1/4 and 4/5 because both factors are less than 1, which follows those rules we talked about with multiplicative identity. Would multiplication situations for the math message make sense with fractions? So let's see. When multiplying fractions by fractions, it doesn't make sense to think of terms of multiple sets of objects. For example, you might have 4 boxes of 8 crayons, but you wouldn't have 1/4 of a half a crayon, 1/4 box of half a crayon. Only some units work with fractional amounts. For example, you can have 3/4 cup of milk, but you can't have 3/4 of a student. So what we're saying with that is you got to think about, is it something logical? Looking at my calendar, I wouldn't say that I have 3/4 of my calendar. I may say 3/4 of the calendar is filled in, but I wouldn't say that 3/4 of a student. I wouldn't say 3/4 of an animal or 3/4 of some of those other objects, right? So you got to think about whether it makes sense in real terms in real life. Area and comparison situations still work with fractions. For example, you have can have a tile that is 1/2 foot by 1/4 foot. You can also say that something is a fraction of the size of something else. So go ahead and pause the video and look at Math Journal 2, 186. So when we look here, we have a couple sample problems, and I do not want you to just copy this one into your book. But let's read the directions. Match each number sentence card, Math Masters, page 199, with the representation card, Math Masters, page 200. Pick one pair and think of a number story that could be modeled by the number sentence and representation. Glue or tape the cards in the box below and record your number story and solution. Repeat with another pair of cards. Now, if you're at home doing virtual learning, you're not going to have these cards. So I have copied and pasted them down here. So you would want to pause the video right now and take a look at these cards. And you just want to pick one example. So you can see on the left-hand side here, you have the multiplication problems. And then you want to go over here and you want to find the card that matches that representation. Okay? And so that's what you'll be doing on here. So for example, we'll look up here in just a second, but I want to give you a minute. So again, you might want to pause the video here, take a look at those. So you only have to pick one, but you're going to take the card from here, and then you're going to find the visual representation. And then again, you might want to pause the video here to look at your other options. All right, so hopefully you have taken a look at those cards. You can always go back to that in the video. Now let's look at their example. They said 2/3 multiplied by 6 equals 4 was the number sentence card they used. And so they said that model is represented with card B, okay? And so they said that that matches up to that story problem or number sentence. And so then they took that same scenario, 2/3 multiplied by 6 equals 4, and they wrote a number story for it. So there were 6 bottles of water in the refrigerator. Sal and his friend drank 2/3 of the bottles. How many bottles did they drink? They drank 4 bottles. So again, you might have to just keep going back and pause and look at the number cards. So that's not something, I don't think it's in your math journal because it's a Math Masters. And they're going to do it again. So obviously you don't want to pick this one. But another example, they did 2/3 multiplied by 4/5. They found that on the number sentence cards. And then they found that card C matched that representation. And then you have a home links that you can look at for extra practice there. So you can see you have 4 multiplied by 2/3. You could write a number story there. And then 1/2 of 16. And remember, when you're doing the fraction, you're multiplying, you could just say 2/3 of 4 of something, and you add 1/2 of 16.